Please take your seats. The program is about to begin.
And here's the twist.
Please welcome to the stage Axios Dallas reporter Naheed Rajwani Darcy.
Hi, good morning, everyone. How are you? Welcome to Axios' AI Across America, What's Next for Dallas. AI is expanding rapidly and reshaping local economies. And Texas is emerging as a regional and national AI hub, bringing new opportunities to the Dallas area. To unpack what this means, we have leaders who are navigating the economic ripple effects of AI, from workforce shifts to rising energy demands, and helping chart what comes next for AI for Dallas and more broadly the state. Please join me in welcoming Jennifer Sanders, Executive Director of the North Texas Innovation Alliance. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome back to Axios Live.
Oh my gosh, it's a pleasure to be back.
So let's frame today's conversation. Why is Texas at the nexus of the AI innovation?
I mean, I think it comes down to the foundational infrastructure and climate that Texas has always exhibited. I think everyone in the room is familiar with the business climate, the tax, the regulatory, so it really enables innovation at its base. And then I think what I've always said is I think Dallas, and if you all see my pin later, it's a cowboy on a drone. Because I think that there's still a lot of misperceptions about what we're good at here, and so that, between the tech industry, biotech, we are really diversified in our expertise, which I think leads us to have the talent for tier 1 universities, low cost of living. So I think we have all of the infrastructural elements, whether physical, digital, or human, that really make this a great place to innovate.
So there's a lot about AI that is both nerve-wracking and maybe exciting. So let's start with what's exciting to you.
I think what's exciting is the progress and the solving of problems that normally take 20, 30 years. I think about healthcare, I think about cures, I think about education. I have several friends personally that have children with learning differences, and the ability for personalized education as a result of AI is just accelerating their outcomes, which I think then has generational impacts as well. So I think the solutions, I always look through the lens of kind of integration across discipline, and because AI crosses all of them, similar to how we talked about broadband years ago and still are, it facilitates everything. I believe AI is going to facilitate progress across the board.
Now let's talk about the challenges. We live in Dallas, and for most of us that live here, we think about drought and resources. I'm curious, what are some challenges associated with AI that we should be thinking about as a society and maybe trying to address?
No, I think there's several, and the first one is trust and misperception, I think. And so when we think about the conversations about natural resources, to your point, I think that they're so critical. And I know there's a lot of innovation in how companies are countering that. And so I think, like many things, and again, I'll kind of go back, I think about 5G and the public sentiment around that and the problems there. And so I think getting in front of and sharing the solutions and sharing the counter arguments and owning, what is real about it. So I think the physical infrastructure and the resource strain, and then I think perception and fear, and how are we quelling that? How are we showing the community? How are we showing our own workforces internally what this means and what it does to elevate and not replace? I think all of those, so I think a lot of it is frankly around engagement, around the realities versus the fiction, because my first work was in media training, and we always said, if you don't tell people who you are, they'll make it up. So we need to be really direct and transparent.
So let's talk about Texas companies. Are we prepared for AI?
Is anyone prepared for AI? I mean, anytime I find a statistic or something, I always say, by the time this event is over, it might have changed. We may have something new here. So I think all of the elements that we have here prepare us and put us in a really great position to succeed. And I think the key is, are we talking and working together and finding those best practices that hit all of the pieces that require success in AI? And so I think, companies here, we have 21 Fortune 500 company headquarters here, and they're all innovating, not just in how they're innovating internally, but also how their products are helping to facilitate. And so I think that there's a lot of preparedness from learning and doing internally, and how are they creating the policies they're advising clients to utilize, but also, really how are we taking the right size steps to ease into it? So I think if anyone says they've totally figured it out, I don't trust them as much as those that admit that we don't.
Yeah, it is constantly evolving. So it's nice to hear that you are also feeling that way as someone who leads an alliance that works with companies and organizations that are also trying to figure this out.
100%.
Can you share a little bit about how various sectors are approaching AI? How are they utilizing artificial intelligence, and what are some ways in which they are maybe innovating?
No, I think there's a lot of ways to look at it. So I know we were talking about, and I said, do we want to talk about the external facing and what they're providing to advance the industry? Are we looking at what they're doing internally to advance their internal operations? And I think there's a great blend of both. Here, I think industries that always are at the forefront, whether it's security or otherwise, things like finance, we have a lot of banking here. And so, I think them establishing their internal, I think there's a lot of innovation and really just a lot of solidifying of the best practices for how are we implementing internally from a responsible and from a protective way for the business, and then being able to communicate that. We also have the inland port of Dallas here, which probably some of y'all are familiar with or have business in, but it's the largest inland port in the country, and a lot of the distribution hubs in there, a lot of those major companies are heavily utilizing automation and AI to improve operations, and I think they do a really great job. Walmart and Kroger do a really great job of hiring and training to utilize those advanced technologies and really take care of the future workforce that they need.
You know, it kind of reminds me of Sam's Club when I walk into the Grapevine Sam's. I don't know if anyone's a Sam's and Costco fan like I am, but it's like you don't even have to check out. You just do it on your app and you walk out. And I can imagine that there are some technologies that are implemented there as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
100%.
Can you talk about our workforce? What are you seeing in terms of our workforce? Are we ready? What do we need to be ready for AI?
No, and I think the critical piece is, are we looking at all levels of education when we think about the talent pipeline? You know, so I see, you know, a lot of work through the school districts, you know, and them incorporating not just, you know, both teacher training and how are they working AI into the curriculum early. Dallas College recently, about a year ago, brought over a campus president who started the first AI and robotics bachelor's degree at Houston Community College. And so I really think, you know, one, putting the right people in the right roles, and again, all of the research universities that, again, are really looking at the combination of, you know, how are we preparing and advancing the energy space related to AI? How are we relating to the policy side? So again, I think we have, you know, it's early, right? You know, but I think that all of the pieces are moving in the right direction to be able to, you know, to enhance and again, not worry about there not being a place for everyone in the new economy.
You earlier in this conversation, you talked about ways in which AI could be utilized to maybe help underserved populations. Can you dive a little bit more deeper into that and what a potentially helpful use of AI could be for those populations?
No, for sure. So a lot of the work we do is in broadband and digital access, so both at the infrastructure level and then also at the human side. And so what we're currently seeing and what we're trying to do is, you know, first look at the human impact, so in their personal lives day to day, because that, you know, when we started looking at, okay, we'll add a workshop on AI 101 in some of our centers, we found that people had no interest because they were terrified of it. The term was scary. They felt like it wasn't something that they needed or they were ready for. And so what we've done is incorporate AI as a through line through all of our workshops, whether that's Microsoft or Canva or, you know, there's all kinds of pieces. So I think underserved populations can be served, you know, first in how is AI going to help them organize their lives, give them more time in their day, give them quicker access to the resources they need, and then really look to, okay, well, what does this mean in your ultimate goal of employment or upward mobility and whatnot. So first, it's got to be personal.
On the flip side, I'm curious if you're able to talk about whether there are some guardrails that could be in effect as we navigate this new era of AI. Obviously, there's some challenges associated with it. There's ethical questions. I'm curious if you're able to talk about that.
I think, you know, one example I heard recently, and this is from a city that was looking at, you know, studying and putting in guardrails internally for their teams, you know, within the city. And they said, you know, what we found is we would teach them about how we wanted them to use AI, and we had the licenses and we had the co-pilot and we had all of the systems internally, but then we realized we hadn't been explicit on, we don't want you to do this on your personal accounts. So they thought it was kind of a general rule, and so, you know, obviously it needed to be mindful of information that is not going into the wrong models and is certainly not PII. So I think guardrails in terms of understanding where people are at, you know, so what is kind of the step zero of how we're preparing and putting guardrails in, and then looking beyond it. But I think there's, I mean, I'll be honest, I think there's so much we still don't know, you know, in terms of where should that line be. And what should we be really aware of? What questions should we be asking?
You obviously oversee a big alliance, and I'm curious if you could talk about, as we start to figure out what we don't know and how to learn what we don't know, what are some things that you're thinking about as executive director?
Bringing in people smarter than me to teach us, I mean, quite frankly. And so a lot of the things I'm thinking about, so we have over 50 members across every sector you can imagine, and every year we do a workshop and we establish what are our top 5 areas of focus and then narrow those down into how are we going to attack those that year. And this year it's what you expect, obviously AI of its own accord, but also sustainability and digital infrastructure and mobility and workforce and economic development. And so what I really have been communicating as we've been framing this out is AI is an opportunity to address all of those within the entire beginning to end chain of what AI can do. So first you need the ecosystem and collaborators, then you need the workforce and the talent pipeline, you need to look at the infrastructure and innovation, and look at the applications that are built on top of it. And so what we're really trying to do is to get, departments or companies or sectors that may not normally think certain things have to do with them or with their role, and having those light bulb moments where we see it has to be an integrated effort. So that's what I'm trying to do, light bulb moments in collaboration.
Well, thank you for starting us off with those perspectives, Jennifer. It's so great to hear about your lens, because you're working on this day in and day out with really important people within the community. I think it's important to hear about the conversation and frame it for the next upcoming conversations that we're having. So that's all for now, Jennifer. Thank you so much for spending time with us and being back at Axios Live.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker has decades of experience, and now he's leading how AI is actually being deployed throughout large enterprises today, including in his day-to-day role as head of AI at Best Buy. Please welcome to the stage Aamer Charania, founding president and chief AI officer of Dallas AI. Hey, it's great to meet you again, Aamer.
Same here.
So help us understand your role in all of this. What are some of the most critical needs that you are hoping to address through Dallas AI?
So Dallas AI's mission is simple. We want to turn Dallas into a dynamic hub for AI. It started for my personal need, to be honest. I wanted to learn more about AI. I wanted to network with people. It started as a small group, just grew because a lot of people were looking for such forums which are educational, which promote networking. Now we have over 10,000 members, and we are the largest nonprofit AI forum in Texas.
And as you think about this, right, I can imagine you're working with a lot of businesses and organizations in Dallas specifically. We already have Pegasus Park for biotech and life sciences, right? We also have our medical district. And then, of course, we have the new Y'all Street. I'm curious, how do you think AI will continue to shape our region as we have all these many hubs that are probably going to be utilizing it?
Sure. So Nahid, the way I see it is, in AI, there is our producers. I mean, we have Anthropic today. I consider them as a producer. Claude, everybody uses it. We love it. Google is Gemini. OpenAI is ChatGPT. Many more out there. And then there are consumers. And that's where there is a lot of appetite in Dallas AI. We are one of the largest hubs for Fortune 500 companies with tons of data they want to consume. Now, coming to your question, I see AI as the enabler. It's one of those things which is not good to have anymore. It is required. Whether you are in financial services, airlines, healthcare, telecom, you name it. Everybody is using AI, and everybody is in a race to make the best use of it.
What about Dallas makes it primed for this innovation and era of AI?
So I think the quality of living in Dallas is what's attracting a lot of talent. I moved to Dallas in '98 from Boston. That time was very different. Honestly, the first couple of years were difficult, to say the least. But the city has transformed. My favorite example, financial services. In just last 5 years, we have passed Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Chicago, and now we are the second largest financial services job concentration in the whole nation. Isn't that amazing? And that industry is at the forefront of leveraging AI.
So we've had a lot of companies that have moved to Dallas, obviously, and by Dallas I mean North Texas, have to represent the northern suburbs. But can you talk about, do you worry that there'll be job loss now that these companies are here and adapting AI?
Yeah, so Nahid, I won't sugarcoat it. There is a real risk there. It happens with every major tech transformation. We saw this multiple times in the past, but there's a difference this time. We are moving very fast. Historically, when tech transformations happen, people have the time to train themselves, to adapt. For this one, there isn't much time. And that's where many organizations are trying to educate, to create awareness, because tomorrow, people who can leverage AI, they would be the best producers. They would create the most value. But I do fear that in the short run, there will be disruptions. Never in my life I have seen computer science graduates from top schools struggling to get a job. So the risk is real, it is happening, but the hope is it's short term.
Through organizations like AI, first of all, I appreciate you being candid about it because I find myself to be technologically savvy and I get overwhelmed about utilizing AI because there's so many platforms out there. But as someone who leads Dallas AI, I'm curious what skills you're trying to impart on your members and other members of the community to stay ahead of what is really an unknown and unfolding situation.
Sure. So our demographics, however, Dallas AI's demographic is very similar to Dallas professionals. So we have representation from producers, hardcore computer scientists, mathematicians. We have workshops for them to accelerate their learning on the newest technologies. We have non-technical folks, product managers. We have industry experts, business domain experts from financial services, telecom, airlines, healthcare. For them, it's all about learning how to best use it. What are the use cases? Learning from each other, where others have failed. But in terms of our focus, it's diverse, but it mimics the professional community of Dallas and their needs.
In your experience, what industries are being impacted the most by this transformation that AI is creating?
That's a hard question, to be honest, right? I would speculate. To me, it's more on the role than industry, and I'll elaborate on that. Roles that are easy to write down on a piece of paper. This is what this person does, would be very easy to be replaced by AI. Call center, even coding. There used to be huge demand of software engineers who could code quickly. Now the demand is software engineers who could make the best use of AI to code quickly, to generate code via AI, but then verify that. Things are changing, but to your question, right, I would think of it as if there's a job that you can describe on a piece of paper that lacks the creativity, that lacks day-to-day changes, those would be the first ones to be replaced by AI in every industry.
And let's talk about things that we all could be doing to maybe be weathered by that storm a little bit. What are some skills or things that those of us in the audience or those who are watching online can be doing right now to be ready?
I would say try it out. Regardless of your role, your background, if you are technical, look at the code. How the new kid on the town, agentic AI, is great. It's not just the hype, that there's a lot of hype, but it's creating real value. How is it working? If you are non-technical, there are tons of no-code tools out there. Build an agent. It doesn't have to be perfect. See areas where it can help you be more efficient. Last weekend, I built an agent to help me with my stock investments. It's nothing fancy. All it's doing is looking at the recent analyst reports, but instead of me spending hours going through them, it goes through them, summarizes that, connects them with the technical indicators, and then puts it all in a summary for me to make quick decisions. Based upon what you do day to day, think what can that small piece of task be there that can be automated.
You shared on my next question, and I'm going to ask you this to see if there's other examples. What are some underrated ways in which someone could use artificial intelligence?
My best one is honestly reading through materials. Whether you are technical, reading through, patents, papers, whether you are non-technical, reading through reports, it consumes a lot of time. Now, we all know AI hallucinates, it can make up things, but there are ways, and that's what, once you try it out, you will see more and more. You can ask it, okay, you are putting this summary, where did you get this from? Tell me in the paper. Guess what? Now, instead of you browsing through a 30-page report, you can look at the paragraphs that are most relevant to you. To me, that is honestly much underrated, one of the best examples. The next step would be use no-code tools to build agents that can automate it. So instead of you telling AI, these are the reports, the AI should browse the internet, should even mimic you going through reports and select the most prevalent ones for you. You always have the option to go back, but it reduces the time. So anything that reduces the time you spend on your job, makes you efficient, I would say that's where you should start.
You're someone that obviously Dallas AI is going to be relevant for a while, it seems like. What are the top 2 things that you're looking out for, and what's next for AI?
From our perspective, our main focus is creating awareness, accelerating the journey. And we see 2 channels to do that. One is getting experts, the best speakers out there, to share their knowledge, both successes and failures. And then the other one is peer learning, networking. So that's one thing about AI, to have these very cool models out there. But then in most cases, to create value, you got to connect with the right people. So that's where we also excel, where we bring people together. Our focus is on the top industries represented in Dallas: financial services, again, healthcare, airlines, telecom, how these industries can leverage AI. And then something emerging, I was just having a conversation, Austin is getting saturated, and we are seeing tons of startups moving. So that's also an area where we are curating, we are helping startups get better, get connections with the industry leaders out there, because there is a need from the industry for these startups. And instead of waiting for somebody from Austin to come, they should have access right here in Dallas.
We'll be ready when they come here and check out more of Dallas from Austin. So thank you so much, Aamer. It's great hearing from you and learning more about what you've been doing with Dallas AI and making sure that the workforce of the future is ready as well.
Thank you, Naeem.
Up next, our view from the top moderator, Axios publisher Nicholas Johnston.
Everyone, I'm Nicholas Johnston. I'm the publisher of Axios. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful morning in Dallas. I love getting out on the road for these important conversations, and I'm hugely grateful for all of you for joining us today, especially if you're a subscriber to Naheed and Tasha's newsletter, Axios Dallas. But thank you for joining us today. Also, we're hugely grateful to the support of our partners. Nothing we do at Axios is possible without the support of our partners. The investments we make in journalism around the country, including right here in Dallas, convening great conversations like this on very important topics like artificial intelligence. That's all thanks to our partners. And so a huge thanks to Anthropic for making today possible. And so I'm very excited to welcome for a view from the top conversation to the Axios stage, Anthropic's head of U.S. state and local government relations, Cesar Fernandez. Cesar, welcome to Axios. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, nice.
How are you? So let's start big picture. I'm sure at a broad way, everyone in the room knows about Anthropic and its growth, but I wonder if you can zero it in and tell us about Anthropic's rapid expansion here in Texas.
Yeah, thanks, Nick, and it's great to be here in Dallas. Anthropic, for those who may not know, is the AI company behind Claude, which is a personal AI assistant that businesses and individuals all around the world, but it's certainly here in Texas, use. And we were really founded on this principle that AI needs to both be safe, but also genuinely useful. And we work really hard every single day to make sure that we scale this technology in a responsible way. And that approach is really what has been driving a lot of the business success that we've seen. So you see large-scale adoption driven primarily by the private sector. 8 of the 10 Fortune 10 companies are using Claude to streamline business operations and be more productive. But we see a wide range of use cases from small and medium-sized businesses that we'll get into. But it's really neat, and we're happy to be a part of that journey.
What I love about the relationship that we have with Anthropic is you folks bring my favorite gifts to conversation, which is data. And I know we've got it shown up on the big screens here, but I wonder if you could dig in a little bit about what the data that Anthropic has tells us about AI use and growth in Texas.
Yeah, definitely. We publish an economic index. You can actually interact with it right over there and encourage everyone to do that. And I love seeing how people here in Texas are using Claude. Some of it is very predictable use. So you see 1 out of every 5 Claude users in the state of Texas is kind of concentrated in mathematics and computer science, and that's to be expected in this innovation corridor between Austin and Dallas. But we're also seeing some pretty interesting non-technical use cases too. There's this this mechanical engineer in Houston named Corey LaChance, and he has a industrial piping construction business. And he's used Claude and built a tool that looks at isometric drawings for piping. And this is a process that, to be honest, I don't really understand.
You've
but
lost me already, right?
It used to take him 10 minutes per drawing to really look into the schematics of this. These drawings, and now because of Claude, it's basically brought that down to seconds, cutting 90% of his workflows and being more efficient so he can grow his business. But the University of Texas Medical Center is one of those other use cases, which is really interesting. They're screening millions of patient records and matching patients to life-saving treatment and making sure that no one falls through the cracks in their community. So we're really proud of the broad range of
what's fascinating about AI conversations, we've been doing this for a couple of years at Axios, but it's moving from the theory to it's real. Like you just mentioned a small business owner. How much in the data are you seeing, or when you travel around the country in your job, are you seeing the real world impacts of AI deployment and adoption?
Yeah, we're seeing it every single day. And it's not just the Fortune 500 type companies, but also a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, people that are starting companies that are really. We were actually talking earlier in the day with an entrepreneur here who built her entire company in the sports sector using Claude, and it's neat to see.
Let's dig into a little bit of the policy implications here. You deal a lot with relations with state and local governments. There's a big topic of conversation around AI, around data centers. In fact, I think the Texas House is holding a hearing tomorrow around that. Anthropic has data centers in Texas. What is your view for how to be a good partner as you move into these states?
Yeah, this is incredibly important for the AI industry. Anthropic has announced, we've announced a $50 billion investment in American AI infrastructure with sites here in Texas. And it's really important that alongside that investment, we also have a commitment to be a good neighbor and a responsible actor in these states as we deploy data centers. So with that investment comes a commitment to make sure that ratepayers aren't footing the bill for the energy usage in the state, that we're going to be paying our own way, not just for energy, but for grid infrastructure improvements to connect to these data center sites. It's also really important, and this is part of our commitment, to ensure that these sites aren't necessarily just a load bearing on the energy grid here in Texas, but they also generate electricity. And the last piece of this commitment, which is really important, is that we've begun doing a lot of work to listen to communities and try to find partnerships where we can increase our footprint, but also support a lot of the institutions that power the communities that we operate in. We recently supported the White House's ratepayer protection plan, and we think that it's not just Anthropic, but the entire industry building compute infrastructure in the United States and in Texas should be following suit as well.
You mentioned the White House. There's interest both at a state and local level. There's interest at a federal level. How do you view navigating that? How do you view the roles for each of these groups to play?
Yeah, look, we've been very consistent that there should be a federal AI regulatory framework that, does the balancing act of mitigating some of the downside risks of the technology, and so that we can really, realize the promise of AI. It's unclear when that will happen, and we're certainly working with members of Congress in both parties to work towards that framework. But in the meantime, the technology is rapidly advancing in terms of capabilities. We're seeing new models that we've released have tremendous amount of capabilities in terms of cybersecurity. And if you think of a state like Texas, we think the state should have a role to play in regulating the critical risk areas of the technology, right? This is a state that last year the legislature, passed SB 7, which, gave billions of dollars and invested billions of dollars in strengthening the water infrastructure of the state. All of that critical infrastructure really needs to be protected from cyber attacks.
Right.
And so the state really should have a role to play in creating, transparency frameworks that make sure that companies like ourselves are publishing and being very transparent of our risk mitigation procedures, that we're not just doing that, but working with government and reporting any critical incidents that do arise from it. Right. So we'd love to partner with the state.
Within that federal framework, there's still a role for states. I would wonder if you, for folks who show up at a morning like this, these are the people who care about this a lot. What is your advice to them? How can they be a force for good? What should they go back when they go to their offices or talk to their elected members of Congress?
Yeah, we're already seeing that the public is there, right? More than 80% of people believe that states should have some type of role in regulating the technology, and we've encourage people in the state of Texas to reach out to their state senators and state representatives and share that concern, because I think it's a balancing act that we can really get right. Make sure that the largest AI labs have these safety mechanisms that Anthropic has and we've invested in, but also do that in service of all of this economic progress that's going to come from using the technology.
We're about to get the hook here, but at Axios, I love to end our newsletters on one fun thing. Let's do that on stage here. Let's end on one AI thing. You work at an AI company. How do you use AI in your real life?
I love this question. I got to be honest, my email inbox is a mess. And so I use Claude every day to automatically scrub my email using the Claude Cowork scheduled tasks feature. Right. And it gives me a cheat sheet at 8 a.m. every single morning that says, here's what you got to respond to, and here's what, you're still waiting for a response, and it helps me just be more productive and structure my day.
The easiest, most simple thing to manage is how do you deal with all your emails?
Yeah,
life-changing experience.
Right.
Cesar, thanks so much for being here. Huge thanks to Anthropic for making today possible, and the conversations are going to continue with my colleague, Maria Curie.
Great, thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Axios tech policy reporter, Maria Curie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Maria Curie. I'm Axios' tech policy reporter. I'm really excited to be having a conversation today with one of the leading voices in Congress on AI and innovation. Please help me welcome to the stage Texas Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne. Hi, Congresswoman. Thank you for being here. Good to see you. So I wanted to start off, just by talking about how you happen to be a representative of a district that is just exploding with data center growth. You have, for example, the Lambda facility build out that is happening throughout this year. And there are a lot of promises that are being made right now by companies, by politicians, about what this growth is going to mean for average people. What is your vision of why this growth is necessary and how it's going to translate into real benefits for the average Texan?
Well, there's a lot of concerns around it, but there's also so much hope and positivity. We can't allow this technology to progress without actually owning it. Mm-hmm. I think the worst thing possible would be to stifle the growth with over-regulation such that China is able to run away with it and we aren't, it's not going to be US-led. We can't allow that to happen. But from a local perspective, I used to be mayor of Irving, Texas. This is right around the corner. From a local perspective, this represents jobs. This represents giving back to the community. This represents if we are able to, how are you? if we are able to do exactly what President Trump and what the state of Texas is looking at is, the BYOP, bring your own power model, that's additional power that they're going to be able to put on the grid, which will actually lower prices. Those things I think are all positive. And I know that I spoke with Bill Flores, good friend of mine, former congressmember, who is now heading up ERCOT. And they are looking at this very closely because they have had so much interest in Texas that they are putting additional money and additional resources into having more power available to make sure that we're not having those power poles. But Texas is crushing it. I mean, policies matter, being good to the business community, having positive relations with business owners, that matters. And if you think about the manufacturing growth, fastest in the country, we have more semiconductor business in Texas than any other state in the country. We're going to be leading in this as well.
So tangible benefits, jobs, potentially lower electricity bills, which I think is not what most people are thinking of these days. They're expecting higher electricity
More power
bills.
on the grid.
Got it.
Power on the grid.
What kind of jobs are we talking about here?
Oh, data center jobs.
Okay.
I mean, you look at Meta Center out of Fort Worth, which is also in the district. They have Meta has a data center there, and they're looking at over 1,200 jobs.
Are these long-term jobs? Are these high-pay, high-benefit jobs? Some of the criticism that these types of jobs get is, well, these are construction jobs, they're not going to last. Is that really something that's going to sustain the average person?
I look at construction jobs, and I look at the ability of Texas to grow. Those are good-paying jobs. And are they temporary? The state continues to grow. So I think they're going to be a vast array of jobs. It's not just one level. It's not just one type. And I think with any kind of growing industry, any kind of growing technology, it's just going to depend.
And when do you think that will happen? What kind of timeline do you have in mind?
Well, what do you mean? It's already happening. We already have data centers that right now are operating in the district.
So those jobs will continue to grow for the years to come.
That's the plan.
The hope.
I mean, it's similar to like when we first started seeing the internet come on, right? Everybody was freaked out that it was going to take over other jobs. Well, yeah, they do take over other jobs. That's what happens with progress. But at the same token, those jobs start to change and they start to meld and they start to develop. There's going to be other jobs that we don't even know about right now that are going to be created as a result of this.
Got it. Data centers are becoming an increasingly salient political issue ahead of the midterms. Mm-hmm. We just saw this week, for example, Indiana City County Councilor Ron Gibson was attacked in Indiana over his positions on data center. His home was shot at 13 times, and this might be, an isolated incident of violence over this issue, but it still seems to be on the top of a lot of voters' minds. And I'm wondering just how you are thinking about this in your conversations in the community.
Yeah, I think when you look at the violence that's in politics right now, it's not because of data centers. There's a lot of division in our country right now. It's not because of data centers. People have different perspectives on a lot of things. And literally as mayor, and I've got someone who I used to work with as mayor, and she could tell you firsthand, there's a lot of passion that are in our communities. When it turns violent is something else. But yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion right now about what the future of AI is going to look like, what the data centers are going to look like. Currently, there's concerns that they are taking power off the grid and there's not going to be enough. Water is a massive concern. In Texas, we always say, water is like our gold, right? Liquid gold. We need to make sure that we have enough of it. When I was mayor, we were so concerned about it, we sued the state of Oklahoma because we were looking at aspects in new ways of being able to make sure that we are keeping up with the growth in our city. So that will be a concern. But at the same token, you also have to have regulations and policies around that to mitigate that concern. And that's what good leaders do.
Yeah. The Texas Tribune reported this morning that more than $1 billion in tax breaks are being given each year to these data center companies, are worth, multi-trillions of dollars. When you talk to voters, what do they tell you about this type of subsidy that's being given to the data centers? Do they get that that's a long-term investment that's going to lead to jobs and lower electricity bills?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, I have not heard from our district that having businesses move here and having incentives that create more jobs, more dollars, economic growth, more abilities for people to be able to make more money, and be able to invest in more. I have not heard complaints about that.
They're more geared toward potentially the electricity costs, the water consumption,
Yes.
the energy consumption. Why not just tax them? What is the argument for
Why not what?
why not just tax these data center companies? What is the argument
These data center
against
companies
that?
are taxed. These data centers
They're also
companies are
receiving
paying.
a lot of
They're
tax
paying
breaks,
property
though.
taxes.
Right.
They are getting incentives just like any other manufacturing company to be able to move here, which again is one of the reasons why we are seeing businesses that were foreign, in foreign countries now coming back to the U.S. And again, that is providing, economic stability to communities. You're seeing additional job growth. You're seeing additional property taxes and other taxes, sales taxes that are being paid in those communities. So business growth is not a bad thing. And having those businesses, having those jobs move from overseas back to the U.S. is exactly what we were trying to do with that one big, beautiful bill, is incentivize to have further job opportunities for working Americans all across the country.
One proposal that's picking up steam is a temporary pause on new construction of data centers. What do you think about that proposal? And this would be a temporary pause to collect more data on exactly what type of energy and water is being used.
And again, maybe Texas is just in a different point, because we do have leadership that has been looking at this for over 11 years. This is the idea of data centers is not something that just happened. And they have been looking at it, and ERCOT has made a huge attempt to make sure that they are ahead of the game. And one of the things that they look at when new businesses are coming through with data centers is, one, to make sure that you're working with good players. There's a lot of companies that are small, that really don't know what they're doing, that are there just to make a quick buck. You've got to be able to tell the difference between those and centers like Stargate, out of Abilene, or the TerraFab, Elon Musk's company out of Austin. But what they do is they do a study to find out what the reactions are going to be to the grid, and making sure that they have enough power moving forward. Those studies are going to be important moving forward.
And what is your response to voters who are concerned about data center demands over water in a state that is experiencing so much drought?
Again, this is the point. I think they're getting a lot better. They're having the closed systems, that they're not using as much water. And I think eventually the water usage will not be the issue. It's going to be the power usage, which is why it's so important to make sure that those data centers are actually building, power and adding to the grid, and not just taking it off.
So I wanted to shift gears here a little bit away from data centers and into deep fakes, which is another issue that I know you've been very vocal about. What should Congress do about this, and what's at stake ahead of elections when it comes to this issue?
Well, yeah, the concern, and we all find these funny little memes, these little reels, and we laugh and we forward them, and they're cute. The ones of like Trump and Hillary in an octagon, fighting, right? And it's cute. Some of the debates, the hearings that I've heard, and they're babies, as Congress members who are arguing these things are cute. But the problem is, at some point in time, when you start seeing these in the commercials are really good, you're going to start questioning, and I already do. Anybody else in here question, is that real? I mean, it is, but sometimes you look at it and I'm like, that's got to be fake. And my concern is that you start having AI get so good that you actually start questioning whether or not you're looking at something that's real and not believing when it's right in front of your eyes. And that will be a concern moving forward. I think it's going to be very important that we start putting some regulations around this, like that you actually have to have a stamp or something that shows people that this is not.
And why can't Congress just pass something on that?
Because there's always the law of unintended consequences, right? I mean, and especially now, everybody has software that they can erase that. Like, what does that look like? What would the enforcement be on it? What are the disciplinary measures that those need to be thoughtfully done, recognizing the fact that you can get around pretty much anything. I mean, AI could take that off. You could produce it. But I don't know how many of you saw, there was a singer who recently made a plea online that she said, AI was fed my songs, was fed my voice. And they started producing songs that they were making money on, but it was my voice and it was my style. And she's like, in order for me to take that back, I'm going to have to sue them. Now, over the weekend, because of so much support that she got for this, the company ended up dropping their product. But can you imagine when that happens to everybody? That's some of the things that we have to think about. But it's not just, oh, we're just going to make a bill overnight.
Are you concerned about what it means for the information landscape ahead of major elections?
Of course. I mean, I've already seen some really bad examples. I'm not going to bring any of them up, but I've already seen really bad examples of deep fakes that have cost people their elections. Mm-hmm. And again, it's questioning, is that real or is that not real? And a lot of times when these things come out, you don't have an ability to respond. People are assuming they're real, they're voting as such, and then before you're able to defend it, the election's over.
Wanted to ask you your perspective on what the federal government's role in regulation, Congress's role in regulation should be compared to the states. Axios reported earlier this year White House efforts to intervene in a Republican Utah lawmakers' efforts to regulate artificial intelligence. I mean, what if that happened here in Texas? How would you react, and how do you view the difference between Congress?
If what were to happen?
If the White House directly intervened with state-level efforts to regulate AI?
It's going to be imperative on the federal government to come up with guidelines on AI. Okay. I look at states like California, and I look at states like Texas. There's a reason why businesses are leaving. People are leaving. Everything is leaving California and coming to Texas. There's a reason why. And I think if we were to look at the California model for just about everything, it would be what not to do. But
we're talking about Utah here, and
but if we were to,
lawmaker.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about states in general. When you have something as important as the progress of AI and the how that's moving forward in the competition that we're going to have from other countries, specifically China, I don't think anybody would feel comfortable having California or some of the other states that are as radical as California have separate laws surrounding AI. When you look at how much they have on their energy grid, and it's because of their regulatory problems,
right, is
why energy is so high right there and how they're not able to even produce it. So I think it's going to behoove the federal government to actually come down with a system and with policies that surround it to make sure that you're not having states prevent that progress. But at the same token, after having been a local representative, I also know there's where the rubber meets the road, and issues like energy, issues like water are going to be really important to your planning for your cities and making sure that you have enough of those. So there's trust but verify, but there's also setting up a system where the state, and in the example of Texas, it's going to be ERCOT, who's going to be charged with basically policing, those levels, but making sure that you've got a system in place, but not having every single state have different AI rules and regulations.
Really quick here in the last 30 seconds that we have, I'm curious what you think of the amount of money that we're seeing from AI PACs being infused into these elections. How are you viewing that?
You mean like Anthropic spending like $174 million?
Anthropic, OpenAI.
To beat Trump? You mean that? What do you mean by more? I think there's been a lot that's already.
We're seeing a resurgence of specific AI company-backed PACs. How do you view that money and how it might impact regulation?
I think super PACs come and go. You've got it based on pretty much every industry. I think again, the example of Anthropic spending that much money to try to prop up Biden and Harris. It's going to come and it's going to go. But it's going to be different in every single industry. I think getting out and having people know you. AI will never take the place of human decision-making and shaking a hand and knocking on a door. It behooves us as representatives to be available, to have commonalities in successes in our different districts. Great. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I put on a job fair every year. It has now become the largest job fair in the country. 35,000 people came last year. I'm sure we're going to have AI jobs that are going to be available, this year and the first week in August. But doing those things will never AI will never take the place of doing those things in the communities.
Congresswoman, unfortunately we're over time, but thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. All right, our next speaker brings a window into a vital piece of the AI puzzle, data centers and their cybersecurity. Please welcome Eden Data founder and Chief Executive Officer, Taylor Hersom. Hey, Taylor. Thanks for joining us.
Having me.
So I wanted to start with the news of the day, which is all of this Anthropic Mythos news, this highly capable model that is not being released yet to the general public because of all of its cyber capabilities. This is coming as other tech giants are releasing models with these capabilities soon too. How does this landscape affect your company, which offers solutions specifically for data centers? And how are you thinking about this new cyber landscape where the capabilities are increasing so much?
It is such an incredible opportunity for all businesses, including cybersecurity-focused businesses. I'm personally fired up by the news. I think that there's an incredible opportunity to create a really an unprecedented disruption in the security space specifically, because historically we've had humans doing a lot of the vulnerability research and remediation, and now we've just proven, in spite of having various enterprise tools deployed, that there is still opportunity to find vulnerabilities that we haven't known about. Some of those were decades old. And so for a security company that goes and helps companies bolster their security efforts, it's such a cool opportunity. I would love access. I got to go talk to Cesar.
Can you talk a little bit about what's at stake here if, a data center doesn't have these types of cybersecurity measures in place and the ability to counter attacks?
Absolutely. I'll try to touch on this from the security perspective because I felt like the speakers really addressed it from most angles in terms of risk as it relates to community and to the state of Texas and everything in between. But from a cybersecurity perspective, as we continue to build data centers in Texas and we are focused on housing AI capabilities in said data centers, we become bigger and bigger targets, right? Nation state risk. We've got various attack vectors that are not only impacting the data centers themselves, but everybody that touches that, right? There's a huge downstream effect. And so it's imperative today that we have data centers investing in security. And right now, regulation has not caught up to that. So data centers today are privately owned, and there's not a specific regulation that says thou shall or thou shall not do these various things when it is related to cybersecurity and privacy. Mm-hmm. There's some implied security frameworks out there, and a lot of data centers are understanding that this is a pertinent part of their business, but it's not systematically enforced, and that's terrifying. And beyond just purely cybersecurity risk around the data, you have the physical risk as well, which then has the downstream effects or technically upstream effects with infrastructure related to supporting those data centers. Can
you dig in a little bit more on what you think that regulation should look like and what the role of government should be?
Yeah, oh goodness, that's a good one. All right. This is being recorded? No, I'm just kidding. So I really actually do believe that we need to incorporate some kind of best practice principle. We already have amazing security frameworks out there that imply the things that you should do to appropriately protect your customers, your employees, the data that you're collecting, intellectual property, all of those things. So it's not like we're having to reinvent the wheel here. We just need to apply some of those best practices to data centers specifically. And so when I see it's kind of like speed limits, right? We put those there as a best practice to follow, because if we do not, then people take advantage of the situation, and there's a lack of safety that's incorporated. So with data centers, I think that because of the criticality of the services that they provide and what they do, we do need to set some kind of baseline. And a lot of what I see today in my industry, when we serve a lot of software companies and tech companies, they are actually, a lot of their security is being driven by the customers that they sell to. And so the Walmarts of the world are saying, if you're a software vendor, you need to do these 30 things in order for me to do business with you. I would love to say that data centers are being forced to do the same things, and in some cases they are, but I do think that regulation at the state level needs to also push so that we have kind of a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah. You have Anthropic's Frontier Red Team head Logan Graham predicting that in the next 6 to 18 months, other companies may be releasing models with this type of power and capability. There might be some people listening to this thinking, why are we even releasing these models in the first place? Why not slow down? What would your response be to that? Is that a realistic thing that companies and the government should be incentivizing?
humans have never been good at just slowing down. I think that I would never want to stifle innovation. I personally, with a biased opinion around security, think that AI has a tremendous opportunity to help us address risks that have historically been systemic and impacting organizations from a business level, from a state level, from a national threat level. And so I personally think that telling folks to slow down, it's not going to accomplish much. I think that instead, we have a lot of the information that we need to incorporate basically how do we catch up on all of these ancillary topics that we're talking about in order to support this innovation and to support where AI is going. And I just think that that's going to take effort from the private sector and from the regulators.
Yeah, and Anthropic, put together this consortium of major tech companies for Project Glasswing. Is that something that you think Eden should be a part of, or how do you see yourself fitting into that effort?
Once again, I'm very biased, but yes, absolutely. I think that it's right now, there is a mass shortage of cybersecurity professionals in the world, specifically in the US. And so that was one of the reasons that Eden was able to be successful, is that we were able to kind of be that augmentation to companies that didn't have security professionals in place or didn't have enough bandwidth. And so with tools like these, it allows us to create superpowers and bring that to companies. But remove Eden for a second, and it is very much an opportunity for any company out there to suddenly augment whatever they have today, whether it's 0 security professionals or an entire team, to be able to focus on things that we're not very good at as humans and that we are not focused on. So that kind of a long-winded answer to your simple question, but I'm personally fired up about it.
I was hoping to get into your footprint here in Texas. What are some use cases, some examples of successes that you've had in the state?
Absolutely. So I know there was a little comment about Austin versus Dallas. I'm born and raised Austinite. Don't hold that against me, Dallas. But we've got a huge presence of startups now in the Austin area. And so there's a tremendous amount of tech being developed in Austin. And we serve customers big and small. So notably, it's really cool to see some customers that are quote unquote small, but are making a huge impact. So Function Health, based out of Austin, Texas, really cool health tech company. We serve Baylor, who has a tech division, and they are now investing in AI and building health tech apps and doing all sorts of things. So Eden's been able to have a pretty cool presence in Texas and specifically in Austin. And then we actually were acquired, and that is now official as of a week ago by a company based here in Dallas, Texas called Riveron. And so Eden has joined forces with Riveron, which has a huge presence in Texas specifically, supporting tech companies big and small.
And what is it about Eden that makes it optimal for startups and more mature companies alike? And why should these companies go to Eden instead of a competitor?
Yeah, so the way we built the service from the get-go is that, hey, the security industry is systemically short-staffed, that there's so many there's 114 different cybersecurity domains that you have to have knowledge in to be able to specialize in. And so you suddenly get into this problem that I've touched on briefly, but that companies either don't have the knowledge, they don't have the staff, they don't have enough staff. And so for smaller organizations, it's saying, hey, lean on Eden so that you can suddenly put someone in place to look at your security risk as you're going and you're selling to the Walmarts of the world, or you're absorbing PHI or PII, and I promise I'll keep the acronyms to a minimum. But there's that opportunity, and then we have our larger customers, Cars.com and Zendesk and these other big companies that they have a huge team, but they don't have enough knowledge and bandwidth to be able to keep up with the security risks that impact any large organization. And so being able to augment with a team from Eden/Riveron has been that's the sales pitch.
Yeah, got it. Sold. You're part of the data center ecosystem. You're also going into these communities. Just as the leader of this company, how are you thinking about that? Going into these communities where there may be skepticism, pushback, fears around, whether it's energy consumption, water consumption, prices, jobs, any of the above.
Yeah, as a Texan, I think and then also as a business owner, I'm conflicted on. I love innovation and I love to see where things are going with AI specifically, but I also absolutely understand the impact on communities. The short answer is people are pretty angry because a lot of it is just lack of understanding or lack of transparency. And so there is this notion of, that forest or that field that I drive by every day is now going to become a concrete jungle, and my electric bill is going to go up, and we already don't have enough water in Texas, and now that's going to get worse. And so not all of that, a lot of that is assumptions, but there's also no direct benefit to the community in many cases, and so, or at least a known benefit. And so I think that there is going to be an opportunity to focus on getting community buy-in that benefits the community as much as it benefits the private companies that are building these, and then the state itself. That's a hard problem to solve, which is why I'm in security and not in politics.
You are national and continuing to grow. Your footprint expands beyond Texas. What are your plans for scaling?
So Riveron was a big part of that. That gives me the rocket fuel to be able to essentially overnight have access to thousands of more brands. I'm really proud of what Eden was able to accomplish in just 4 years and the companies that we've been able to serve. But to be able to go into every industry and be able to reinforce what I've been talking about, which is that cybersecurity is relevant to everybody. If you're collecting data, the flower shop down the road needs to think about data privacy and cybersecurity. And so being able to have the opportunity to make a bigger impact, I mean, that's every founder's dream, and I'm living it, and I'm so thankful for it.
Let's end on one fun thing. How are you using AI in your personal life? How have you found it?
Oh dear, I thought I saw this coming. Okay, so personal life, yes. I use I use Claude and I use ChatGPT. Sorry, Cesar. And I use it as a means to clean up my email, just like he had mentioned on stage. But I also use it as kind of a sounding board in the sense that specifically for security topics, as I'm thinking about how to think about services to bring to customers or think about internal communication to staff, I try to use it as a sounding board, as a additional data point to be able to give me the ability to think outside the box and to my feeble, limited brain. And so that's a fun way to use it. I also have used it a couple times for vacation planning, and that's been pretty good, honestly.
It's great for travel. That's how I use it too.
It's pretty nifty.
That's all the time that we have, unfortunately. This, in fact, was recorded, and you can catch it on YouTube and find all of our newsletters on axios.com/newsletters. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank y'all so much.